Welcome to the You Are a Force podcast channel, your go-to space for real stories, fearless dreams, and unstoppable women rewriting the rules. And the force behind this podcast. Here is your host, Binoli Botadara.
Hi everyone, welcome to You Are a Force, the podcast where we celebrate women who master their inner world to conquer the outer world. Rewriting the rules, how to lead, heal, create, and live fully. I'm your host, Binoli Botadara, and today I have someone very special as we're going to dive into the conversation that begins where the language ends. Because the transformation doesn't always start with a thought. Sometimes it starts with a single breath, a shift, or a movement. My guest today is known as the therapist who moves. She is a pioneering psychotherapist, a board-level certified dance and movement therapist, a brilliant author of groundbreaking book, Body Aware, and her work reveals that the body isn't just the vessel, it's a storyteller, it's a guide, and it's a healer. So I cannot wait to dive into the world which she actually makes us perform in a much better way to get rid of the anxiety, the trauma, and a lot of other things in between. So it's my absolute pleasure to welcome none other than very insightful and innovative Erica Hornthal. Erica, thank you so much for being on You're a Force.
Oh, thank you, Binoli, for having me. That was such a beautiful introduction. I appreciate it.
While I was doing a research or stalking you at that point in time, I was like, oh my God, I was living literally under the rock that the kind of work you are into, I could not even imagine, someone doing that. So I was super impressed. So whatever I said, I genuinely mean it and believe it. So it's really amazing, and I'm quite excited to actually have a conversation with you. So I want to go back to the beginning, back to the blueprint before you became the therapist who moves us. What was your original plan when you were growing up? How were you as a kid? Were you also analyzing body language at that point in time while you were growing up? How did it all start?
That's a really good question. I don't remember myself perceiving or even being interested in body language per se, but being interested in dance my whole life, I think I'm going to back up. I know that I've always been able to take on other people's movements. In dance class, if our teacher was showing us a specific part of a choreography or we're learning a dance, or I loved to be on stage, so if I was learning a role or a part, just for fun, I really knew how to embody not just that character, but to really, in the best sense of the word, mimic what my educator was showing me, which sounds lovely if you're trying to be accurate and really copy someone's movement. As we get older, though, it does make it more challenging to be an individual because we have to embrace our own movements. So I got really good at following and mirroring other people's movements. And I think that's stuck with me, and that has actually made me, I think, the dance movement therapist that I am today. Because while it is not about mocking or mimicking movement, there is this huge value in being able to mirror and to empathize with someone through their body movements. So that was definitely something I don't remember ever not being able to do. But the trajectory was pretty, I think, simple. I loved to dance. I loved to perform. I also had a huge capacity for wanting to be with people and hear their story and sit in their emotions, their feelings, kind of be that shoulder to cry on. So as I got older, those two were just very, very close, but never really intersected until I was in college and someone actually showed me how the two could intersect and introduced me to the world of dance movement therapy, or in other parts of the world, dance movement psychotherapy. So that kind of started my love affair with what I do today. That was in about 2002, somewhere around there. And I finished my schooling. I got my graduate degree in dance movement therapy and counseling here in the United States. Um, and then the rest is kind of history. I just started doing the work and practicing any way that I could. Eventually, I opened up my own private practice and I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, started dabbling in this, world of writing. And yeah, that kind of brings me where I am today. So it was my love and passion for helping people and movement and just finding the intersection of the two. And it's been, I guess, in a very fantastical way, a love affair ever since.
Love it. Love that because I am a dancer as well. I'm a trained dancer, and my mom actually sent me into everything, skating to swimming to all other things.
Um,
I even the theater, even the drawing, painting, whatever you call it. And I think I zeroed down eventually as a dancer because I used to express myself while I was dancing. I was not impressing anyone, and it was just me and just myself when I dance, and it just makes me so happy. And but I never knew this side of the world which you're into. So I got super intrigued and excited that wow, I did not even know that it can heal people. So that's something extraordinary. But it just makes me wonder that the entire psychology or the practice of psychology is pretty much about dominated by talk, right? So but what you do is completely against that, and you choose to use the dance movement and the therapy. And so please take us through the journey that how does that actually work, in terms of how does it impact your mind, and how did you know that it was making a change into your behavior or your healing or someone else's? Like, what was that lightning strike moment where you think that or you thought that it's working?
okay, I'll start with the first part of your question, right? How does this work happen, and how did I kind of, go about it? So, I'm always very aware of the fact that yes, I'm doing this work. It is in part because of all of the amazing, I say women because our field is really dominated by women, which is kind of funny to say dominated because women tend to be the minority. But there were so many, and there are some men in our field that probably don't get enough credit too. But when it comes to dance movement therapy, there were so many incredible women, dancers, practitioners, healers that came before me that I simply get to learn from and then continue to highlight their work and make it accessible, because as you mentioned, in today's day and age we really think of psychology as in the mind. We think of psychology as talk therapy, and that's really not where it started. Psychology is really mind body spirit. So my intention is really to just get back there, allow people to understand that it really isn't all about the mind. It isn't all about talking, because that's a very high level of functioning, which not everybody has access to, but we can also talk ourselves out of and into things. And the body doesn't do that. The body sits with what is. And when we start to project into something or dwell on the past, we're no longer in the present. We're not in what our body is sensing. So I am really interested in helping people understand that our psyche, our thoughts, that is not the beginning. The beginning is actually the sensation. It's the sensing, the emotion, energy and motion underneath the behavior. So, in order to change our thinking, or at the very least become more aware of our thinking, it actually starts with the way that we move. And dance movement therapy has been this lovely exploration in helping myself, but also people uncover that there is so much life behind the thought. There's so much life after the thought as well. But I think to get back to the second part of your question, when you were saying, like, what was that aha or that light bulb moment? I always come back to one of the first sessions I had with a client, a 30 something high functioning individual. And I remember the inner monologue I had with myself while I was doing this work.
Hmm.
And this is not proprietary to dance movement therapy. There may be some somatic people listening thinking, I do that with my clients. This was just something that intuitively popped up in our session. She mentioned this kind of blockage in her back. We were just talking a little bit about it. I asked her if she'd be interested in doing a little bit of a movement assessment. I wanted to see what her spinal flexion was like, how much capacity and mobility she had in her core and her torso. So we did a little cat cow, a little kind of um yeah, spinal flexion and contraction. And right about the middle, kind of just below her bra line, it stopped. It was just really frozen.
Really?
And I asked for permission to kind of put my hand on that place. She said yes. And I said, do you feel this? So she said yes. I said, can you move that? So she's kind of like, not really. It just feels like a block. It feels frozen. And I asked her if that part could talk, what would it say? And then I remembered it in my head, kind of laughing and thinking, oh my God, she's going to fire me. Like who says that?
Yeah.
Even though I'm sure a lot of somatic people are like, oh yeah, this is the language of the body. But it just intuitively came out. Thankfully, she was a very open person. She sought out dance movement therapy. So I figure I'm in good company. But she paused for a while. She didn't say anything. And I thought, okay, think of another intervention. Try again. And she said, it's lonely and it needs attention. And then she started to cry.
Oh
And
my.
I stopped and I kind of like the light bulb went off. And again, this was the first time I had tried an intervention like this. I was a new therapist. And I was just like, oh my God, this is the work. This is what I'm going to continue to do. So we explored that part. And then for the next almost 10 years that we worked together, it was really about thawing out this place, which was a lot of her identity, a lot of confusion and covering things up and appeasing people in her life and gaslighting herself because other people had been gaslighting her. It was amazing, but that kind of started it all for me. And that was one example very early on of how when we let the body speak and we just notice what the body is holding, we can go deeper into what we've been trying to talk through for so many years.
Oh my God, I love that. When you talked about how her reaction was, it just gave me chills in my body
Yeah.
because I'm sure each one of us have that. And because I've been a dancer, I am super flexible. But there are so many times, so many parts of my body, I know there's a stiffness. And every time I touch, there are either knots or there's some sort of issue. But I've never tried to talk to myself and hear this. Maybe I'll give it a try and tell you what it tells me. But it's fascinating to hear that it starts with something so basic, but it can also heal depression, anxiety, trauma, and actually something which we are holding unconsciously as well. Because I was
Yes.
going through, this yoga, yin and yang yoga. And
Mm.
when I do the yin yoga, the next day my body hurts so much because technically yin is not about putting pressure to your body, but still there's so much comes out the next day, and
Yeah.
that's when unconsciously also you realize that how much stress you were holding. So that's something really, really personal to me, and I'm so glad that we spoke about it. But given the chronic stress which is linked to the changes in our body,
Mm.
what happens in the brain, and how does that part of the body and the brain sort of connect and talk that we understand that there's some issue somewhere?
So it's really important for us to remember how the brain develops. And even though we're very conscious heavy, thought heavy, executive functioning heavy, again, when abilities allow us to be, we forget, and I think this is my feeling. I believe that we forget about the primitive, early developmental parts of the brain, which are the brainstem, right? Then up into the limbic system, which is the center of the brain. The executive functioning for many of us, maybe even people listening, is still developing. Like into our 20s. It's not fully developed by the age of 3, not even fully developed by the age of 16, right? And there's neuroplasticity, so our brain can constantly change. So remembering that the brain and its structures develop through movement experiences and sensory opportunities, right? That it starts with the part of the brain that regulates my breathing, because breathing is the start, right? Starts with the area that regulates my respiratory system, my heart rate, and then goes into higher functioning, like the ability to retain memories, conscious thought, critical thinking, if we're, focusing on that, because nowadays I feel like we don't. But so to me, that's just a very general sense of understanding like where the ties are. It isn't about connecting mind to body, right? Of like, oh, my mind thinks this and my body feels it. I really believe it's just remembering the developmental process of how we come to be. And it all starts through movement. It all starts through rhythm and regulation and homeostasis in the body, which then allows the brain to continue to develop. And then these higher functioning, the ability to think and introspect and process and create through more thought and write. That's a very high functioning process. It's not something that comes very quickly or even very easily to a lot of people throughout their lifespan. So that to me is the connection. It's the developmental stages of it, right? That body, not to say chicken or egg, but like body comes first. I mean, body and sensation and experience, and lends itself to being able to critically think and to process things in a more cognitive way. So then as we age and we become these conscious beings, we are aware of how the two connect, right? But it's usually through thought. I think this, I feel that. I think this, I move this way, or I behave this way. And then we've gotten into this world of very much like cognitive behavioral therapy, where thought leads to behavior, but we've negated or forgotten that in order to think, we had to go through this developmental process of sensing and moving and feeling. So without getting too like science heavy, because I think sometimes I lose myself, but I also lose my audience in that too. Just remember that there are developmental processes, right? That start in sensation and movement, and that is the base of the brain, right? It's the development of the brain, and it's what's so powerful too when working with clients, because we're bringing them back to their origins. We're bringing ourselves back to this early pattern, these early times, embracing that, so to speak, inner child, and reconnecting to the places that nurture, that support, that create stability and safety, regulation, which is kind of a hot topic these days. It's just where it all starts, so they are connected because they develop, together at some point. But, thinking, I believe, is possible because we move, because we've sensed. And for the first 3 years of life, that's really most of what we're capable of until we decide, I have something to say about that. And then we don't stop saying something about it. So,
Yeah. No, I love that because it's something so fascinating that we do unconsciously so many times, but we don't really realize and understand. Perhaps that's the reason we know something called body language, right? We're so used to that word, but we do not actually dissect and understand what that is. And Dr. Albert Mehrabian's research very famously shows that 55% of the communication is nonverbal.
yeah.
So I want to ask you that when you are with your patients and the patients actually tell you one story, but their body is communicating something else, How do you handle moments like this?
Um, so I try to empower my clients, especially because if they're coming in to my practice, usually there is the sensation that they don't know what's going on in the body, that not that they're placing all this pressure on me, but sometimes there is this unspoken feeling that I'm the expert of their body, or I'm going to tell them what's going on or what I see. And I'm not the expert of anybody's body. I mean, I say except my own, but I don't even feel that way sometimes, right? So I'm right there with them. What I really try to do is create those opportunities for awareness, so especially if I see what we call incongruence. I'm telling you something, but my body is showing something else. A great example of this is, for our preteens and teenagers, right? When they're like, hey, honey, how was your day? And we hear the words, it was great, but their body language is suggesting anything but. They're like, it was great. It was fantastic. I had the best day ever. You're like, really? Because you look bored, or you look upset, or, like without inferring or making it about me. This is what I see. So that's a great example of incongruence, that the words that you're speaking don't match your body language or what you're expressing. Sometimes it's just because it's masked or we're not even aware of what we're expressing. So in those moments, I will use the opportunity to empower my clients to say, let's just pause the story for a moment. What are you noticing in your body right now? It doesn't have to be internal because that's a little scary sometimes. I'm like, can you tell me a little bit about how you're moving right now? What does your posture look like? What are you aware of? Do you notice any sensations, any areas of your body that are speaking to you while you're telling this story? And it might take a few moments, but they do recognize something. Even if it's like, I'm a little chilly. My shoulder hurts. I have a headache. It's like whatever is possible in that moment, we are interrupting the autopilot story, sometimes the story they've told multiple times to multiple people. And we're starting to understand like we are a living, breathing entity. Something's going on under the surface. So then I might ask, do you think that anything you're experiencing in your body right now is related to the story you're telling me? Oftentimes it's like, no, I slept funny, or I just have a bad back, Okay, fine. But then we can dig a little bit deeper. One time I was working with a young woman and she found it very important to tell me how hypermobile she was. I've been super flexible my whole life. I was in gymnastics. And it's actually I have a very sore back. She kept calling it a bad back. My back is really bad, I think, because I, was so hypermobile as a kid. At the same time, we had already been talking about boundaries and how she, quote, bent over backwards for people. So I remember asking her, I was like, do you think that bending over backwards has anything to do with your hypermobility? And that was the first time she had ever thought of that. Anybody had ever posed it in that way. I think it might have been the first time I ever asked that question to anybody. And same thing. She had this like very visceral response, actually started crying. And she said, yes, I think it has everything to do with it. So we got to start to explore that and what are boundaries and how do we not push beyond our boundaries? How do we conserve our body so that we're not just doing what it's capable of, but we're doing what it needs? So, creating these opportunities for awareness and just starting to notice how my thoughts and my body work together, how they interact, how one overrides the other, how the other might be afraid to show up or feels anxiety about being present. It's so important. And then it's not about me saying, I'm seeing this, you're doing this. I've had those moments with clients where we build more trust, we know each other, they feel more comfortable in session, and I can say, do you notice that you're holding your chest again? And they're like, oh, yes, thank you for pointing that out,
Yeah.
So it's not about me judging. At the end of the day, it's like, okay, here's the mirror. The mirror's been up for several years or months or weeks as we've been working together. I want you to tell me what you're seeing in your mirror.
Hmm.
That comes over time. I never want to start there because it isn't about me knowing anything more. It's about supporting the client and noticing what is already there for them.
Hmm. Love that. And I want to understand that you specialize pretty much in, so you
No, you're
specialize into kinesthetic empathy, so which is embodying the client's movements and then, basically exactly how does it work? If you can tell the listeners that, how is it important and how does it transform the mind, body, and soul?
sure. Okay, so let me just start with oddly enough, I don't use as a practitioner, only recently have I actually started to hone in on the word kinesthetic. I'm building this framework in which I use the word kinesthetic and cognition together. Prior to that, though, as a dance movement therapist, in the program I was in specifically, we talked a lot about kinesthetic attunement, which is tuning into your client through your own body's sensations. That's my understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible for anybody. I think every therapist, regardless of whether they're body oriented or not, could benefit from this awareness. But it isn't just about attuning to what we see or feel in our client. It's actually giving permission to notice what we feel in our own bodies as well. Because oftentimes it actually informs where I'm going to take my client next,
Okay.
especially when I'm working with a client that might have a blockage or is uh, unaware of what they're experiencing. I might say, "Ooh, I just got this flood of heat," right? Or, "Ooh, my heart rate really just increased." Are you feeling anything like that? I'm wondering if this is something we're sharing together. They might say, "Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, my heart's pounding right now." I'm like, "Okay, we can work on this together, right? Let's work to regulate. Let's co-regulate a little bit." Sometimes it's the opposite, and they're like, no, I'm not feeling any of that. Okay, maybe they're not tuned into it. However, it could also be me. Maybe this is some transference that I'm receiving. Maybe this is my own stuff coming up. And as a responsible, ethical practitioner, I'm going to do something with that after our session. I'm going to take it to my own therapist. I'm going to move through my body, whatever I need to do, so that I don't hijack someone else's session, right? So, this kinesthetic attunement piece is a very deep way of being in relationship, right? With a client, with our family members, with our loved ones. It's this embodied, not just empathy, because empathy is important. I just took this class though, and we just kind of unpacked the fact that empathy isn't the end all be all, that we can actually benefit a lot from compassion, not just diving into empathy. So, it's kind of this way, another way of just recognizing your own body and
Mm-hmm.
noticing how that plays a role in the presence of others. So the kinesthetic part really is all about movement. Kinesiology is kind of the study of movement, body. Unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of schooling around kinesiology or anatomy. It's a love, something I'm continuing to educate myself on personally.
Mm-hmm.
But this marriage, right, between how we move and what we think or how we think, is, I believe, a really big part that's been missing from this more mainstream conversation of mental and emotional well-being.
Mm.
So it's super, super important. There's a lot of lovely research that has been done on kinesthetic attunement. Think of Dr. Danielle Frankel, who is a dance movement therapist, actually does a lot of work in India, is based in the United States, but she, yeah, really speaks so eloquently about kinesthetic attunement, which lends itself to this idea of kinesthetic empathy. It's deeply embedded in the work that we do as dance movement therapists. And I think a lot of other people
Mm.
do it as well intuitively. They might not know what to call it, right? Or they might not understand how it pertains to their practice, but it's vital. If I didn't have that with my clients, I don't feel like I would be practicing dance movement therapy.
Mm. And I always wonder that therapists like you deal with so many people's traumas and all sorts of negativity. Do you bring that home? And if not, how do you deal with it? Because I mean, if somebody has come and cried on your shoulder, it rubs on to you as well, right? So how do you look after yourself and your body?
Well, one word, dance. Dance has always been my practice. It is what keeps things moving through my body. It's what keeps me showing up in life. Outside of that, though, it is constant education. It's constant, how do I want to put it? It's
And
constant practice in
practice of
knowing that,
detachment.
what's that?
Practice of detachment.
Practice of uh, owning what's mine and what's not,
Okay.
right? Like, yes, detachment, I think in some sense, it can be detachment. I just recognize sometimes that word comes with a lot of weight, right? So if people are like, my therapist detaches from me, what is that? Like where's the attachment in that? It's detaching from someone else's story,
Right.
right? That when I hear someone else's story and I'm even feeling it or trying it on, I'm not attaching to it. I'm not taking it with me.
Yeah.
That took a lot of time. It's still a practice because some stories are familiar and
Yeah.
some of them are brand new. And, to have someone come into my office and tell me something that I'm like, whoa, I thought I've heard it all, but clearly I have not. And the fact that, like, I've heard this story before, yet this is the first time I'm hearing it from this person in their way.
Mm.
A body is carrying it differently because every body carries things a bit differently.
Yeah.
So, it's also recognizing, am I detaching because I'm scared?
Mm.
Am I anxious right now? Am I starting to have these stress responses or trauma responses? That's really important information so that I can continue to show up for myself because then I can continue to
Yeah.
show up for my clients. So the practice is movement, right? I'm continuing to dance and move my body. It's having my own therapist,
Mm.
so I can unpack the things that are going on in my life so I have more capacity for my clients.
Mm.
But I can also, in a confidential, ethical way, talk about how what's coming up in some sessions impacts me.
Mm.
And be responsible for how I show up in sessions.
Mm.
I can't do it all the time. Things are going to come up. And I think there's also a bit of transparency sometimes with clients
Mm.
that I'm not making the session about me, but I believe it's okay to say, wow, your story is really impacting me today. This is what I'm feeling in my body. What does that sound like for you? How does it feel to know that someone else is deeply connected to what you've experienced? Sometimes we cry together. It
Really.
isn't about them holding me. However, sometimes the roles reverse and there is empowerment in that, right? There's a colleague of a brilliant dance movement therapist. I hope it's okay to call her a colleague now, Amber Elizabeth Gray. She she does work with refugees, activism, but her work is deeply embedded in polyvagal informed dance movement therapy. And she talks about it as a therapeutic alliance, that it's not about being above or below our clients. It's actually meeting them eye to eye. And that sometimes they're going to rise above and kind of check us, like, hey, what are you doing? Or come
Mhm.
on, you need to take care of yourself. You preach to me how I got to take care of myself. You got to take care of
Um,
yourself too.
And those might
So,
unlock some sort of conversations which you never thought about, right? I mean, so we all
yes,
move and, learn something different about psychology and human behavior.
yes. Yeah. And I think as therapists, for so long, it was like, don't talk about yourself. Don't let them know anything about you. You're here for them. And I didn't learn that in dance movement therapy school, but just studying psychology, I remember kind of being very, just put it back on them. Why are you so interested in me? What does that mean for you? So if I have a client asks me, oh, you had to cancel the other day because your son was sick. Is he okay? I appreciate that. I'm
Yeah.
not going to go into huge detail and hijack their their
Yeah.
session, but I'm like, oh, thank you so much for asking. He's doing much better. I sent him to school. How about your kids? How are your kids doing? So it's this
Yeah.
dialogue, it's this reciprocal alliance.
Mm.
That's where trust comes in. And it makes a huge difference in the relationships and the growth that I see in my clients over time.
Amazing. But I always wonder that it's a cruel paradox because the dance movement therapy is pretty much when we feel extremely anxious or tired, and at that time we actually are going to or asked to actually do the movement. So that is sort of response of the body and mind, which is actually, or rather, the movement when my body is not really in the mood to dance. So, what are the three perhaps effective dose of movement which, if someone feels really tired or anxious, you would recommend, or if you can give us some hacks which people can, do to actually instantly feel better about themselves?
Sure. Oh, well, that's hard to say, right? Like, I can't guarantee someone's going to feel better. You will feel, right? There will be some movement. So, um, I'm going to go back to this acronym that I use a lot. I call it ACE, ACE, acing your mental health. And so at any given time, you can become aware, right? Not just how am I feeling, but what's happening in my body or around my body right now? What am I aware of? So if I'm feeling really low, experiencing maybe symptoms of depression, right? What's the posture happening right now? Maybe I'm huddled under the covers or, looking down, my shoulders are hunched, I feel heavy or weighted. That's the awareness. The C is it keeps expanding. It used to be challenging. Now I call it changing. It could be curiosity. Become curious and challenge the way that part is showing up. So again, if I'm noticing that my head is down and my shoulders are hunched, is there some way I can challenge that? Can I lift my chin a few centimeters? Can I, just kind of lift my chest a little bit, not a lot, because the movement might not be there. That's okay. Is there some shift that I can make in my current posture? And then the E is the expansion or the expression. So maybe that leads to, you know, lifting my whole torso. Maybe now I'm noticing I'm rolling my shoulders. Maybe my eyes are up and I'm looking out the window or I am looking around the room. I can start to do a little bit of that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, which is, noticing 5 things, hearing 4 things, touching 3 things. Like get in touch with your sensation. I think it really takes the awareness and the shift before we can really do anything else with it. But at the heart of it, when we do those things, we will feel differently. It doesn't mean we're going to automatically feel better or lift out of our depression. We will feel differently. And then we may have the initiation or the motivation to do something, right? To get out of bed, to open the curtains, to make myself something to eat, to call a friend, do something that helps support me through this really challenging time simply by noticing what's going on in or around my body, being curious rather than judging it, and then finding a way to express that or expand that. So it's empowering because it isn't just, oh, you feel bad, go exercise. That there are a lot of steps to get to that place. And like you said, my body might not feel like doing that. And then what? Then I'm just going to stay in bed all day. Look for the small micro shifts that we can make. Maybe by the end of the day or the week, you will feel motivated to go do those things that really feed your soul, like a dance class, a music class, socializing with a friend. But there are so many steps in between that. Um, just to offer like a general, I think of brushing our teeth. When we brush our teeth, we think it's really simple. Toothbrush, toothpaste. When you have a cognitive impairment, I worked a lot with individuals that have dementia. there are like 23 steps to that we don't even think about.
Really?
You know, it isn't just, well, I'm just like throwing a number out there, but it's like,
Still,
okay, find the toothbrush, pick up the toothbrush, find the toothpaste, open the toothpaste, squeeze it onto the brush. You know, it's like so many little steps that we take for granted. The
yeah,
same thing happens with everything we do, you know? So it's like, don't just go from I feel bad, I'm going to go dance, right? I feel bad. What does that look like? What is bad? What's happening around me? Will that motivate me 100 steps down the road to go dance?
yeah,
Hopefully, because you will feel better.
sure.
But so many steps that we take for granted, we don't even realize.
I'm sure this is so, so amazing. And while you were saying, I was actually counting what I do in terms of opening or taking
Right?
a brush
Like,
yeah.
it's so many steps. I mean, I have a young child who's trying to learn all of that, and you realize, like, oh my God, there's so many
I know.
steps here. How do I explain this, you know?
And so many times we're like in an auto mode, it's autopilot, you're sleepy, half sleepy, you're in a hurry, you're watching time, oh my God, I need to rush to work, whatever. So, so many things you just do it on autopilot, you don't really realize, but now since
Yeah.
you're breaking it up, and what you said is something super small and easy to do, but if you actually be aware that you can make some change and difference, and I'm sure with those small movements, we can feel 100% some sort of difference, not like black and white difference, but at least that there'll be some positivity in the body and mind. So thank you.
Yeah, it just,
Sure.
there's a shift. You just feel different, right? That's the whole point.
It might not from 0 to 100, but might be like 0 to 22, 23, and then ultimately you can pick up on that and then keep pushing it. No, absolutely. But
Yeah, and you teach yourself that there are things that work, right? So if you practice that over time, that new habit will become autopilot,
yeah,
right? And you go from like, well, how do I feel? What do I need? When you're just like, oh, I've been here before. I need to call someone, right?
yeah.
Or, oh, I've been here before. I need to stretch my body in this way. That's what's going to get me going, right? So it's not just trying something on, you're actually learning through experience what it is that you need in those moments, and they come much faster.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to pick up, Erica, on athletes because 35% of the athletes go to mental health challenges, maybe because of the
Yeah.
injury, the kind of pressure they go through on the daily basis in terms of the whole world as being critical. A lot they have it on the stake, right?
Yeah.
So if because I believe that when you come in touch with the athletes and when they have to rebuild themselves from the mental health challenges, how do you show them like non-verbally what can they do to actually keep their mind, body, and soul sane so their sport will not get impacted?
Hmm. It's a really hard one. I mean, it's totally doable. It's hard, and I find this with dancers who I believe are athletes too, right? That we're so afraid that if we challenge the awareness of our body, that it is going to impact our output, our performance. So yeah, we see these athletes that push, 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 but then at some point there is a breaking point, right? We've seen this on the Olympic stage. You know, I say if athletes were the picture of health, wholeness, they wouldn't be having these mental breakdowns. I
Mm,
mean, everybody has breakdowns, right?
yeah.
But it wouldn't be in such this like, I just had to quit my sport because it's been too much. We
Mm,
would actually be supporting both along the way. We would be
yeah.
building these resilient bodies and minds, right? So it's a hard conversation to have. I would love to be working personally with more dancers, but there is this stigma, that, well, I can't uncover too much of the psyche of what's going on because it might influence my performance, and then I can't put bread on the
Yeah.
table, right?
Yeah.
So honestly, it's the same as what I do with my clients who don't consider themselves athletes or dancers. It's like awareness, right?
Mm,
What's going on in your life? What is going on emotionally and physically? Where do the two intersect? If
mm,
you don't believe they intersect, then that's where we go. right? We're like, they are related.
Mm.
Your body and mind are connected. What's going on here, right? Sometimes it's easier to engage in kind of the structural aspect of it, right? I love this idea of building neuroplasticity and resilience
Mm.
through the body. So we're looking at like range of motion equaling range of emotion, you know? So an athlete can be very accustomed to moving in one way, right? We can start to look at rhythms. What is the rhythm of your day? What is the rhythm of your performance? What is the rhythm of your, practice, your regimen? It's often very strict, right? Very regimented, very time oriented, very direct. We get to look at these qualities or characteristics of movement and build in more uh more language, right? So let's look at it as a spectrum. Everything's very regimented over here. What would it look like to have no schedule, no routine? That's really like really
Mm.
overwhelming for a lot of athletes.
Mm.
Let's play with that spectrum, right? So we learn to move with bound, direct movement in our body, but then we also learn to bring in some flow and lightness. And maybe it's that lightness that gives way to, oh, I need a break. I need a nap. I need one less hour of conditioning today, instead of just this constant push, push, push.
Right.
That push is a rhythm. That push is a characteristic of your movement. Unfortunately, we
And
also
being
have
hard
people
on,
that are,
yeah, and being
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm just saying that being hard on yourself, right? I mean, you think that
Yes.
just by going at like 150 kilometers an hour speed, if that's how it's going to happen, then you keep pushing, but then that might even break, at some point in time. So,
Yeah. It's
yeah.
also about changing the culture a little, a lot, where, uh, we have coaches that are like, well, if you won't, someone else will. If you're
Mm,
not going to put in 12-hour days, then I'm going to go to Joe because he's already doing it, you
yeah.
know?
Yes.
It's dangerous. It's really dangerous because, we're setting this precedent that it is more important to push yourself to every limit possible than
Yeah.
take care of, your everything, your mental and physical well-being. Sometimes it's the cards we're dealt. Someone can push, push, push for 30, 40, 50 years and not break. Others of us, we push
Yeah.
for 2 hours over what we should and we tear our ACL, So it's
And
also living with disappointment, which is so hard for us, athletes, dancers, performers. How do we titrate? How do we allow discomfort and disappointment and not getting everything, even though we've put everything into it?
yeah.
It's so hard, but being able to sit with those emotions is actually a growing point too.
And I personally think while I was listening to what you were saying, that every folk needs a different stroke, right? So what works for you might not work for me. And I was just thinking about when you were saying this. So while I was having one of the personal trainers in my gym, and he used to make me do things which I was not super comfortable. And then he would just, show me around, like, look at that lady, she is doing 100 squats. Look at that person. This person is doing this. And oh my God, why can't you do it? And I literally stopped. I paid for like 12 sessions. And I think
Uh,
the sixth session onwards, I was like, I'm not going this. You need to understand that it doesn't, I mean, I don't compete or compare myself with others. If they can do
yeah,
500, good on them, but I can't do it. So make me do
yeah,
things which I can and then push me with that, right? So
yes,
it really put me off, and I can imagine the kind of people they think that by pushing somebody they would look better as a coach or as a
yeah,
trainer. I mean, that's a shame, actually, to be very honest. So no, I totally understand that what you're trying to say, but I just want to pick up on one thing that we have spoken till now about what do we do once we feel anxious or once we feel tired or tight or whatever, but what is I mean, what is the one thing you would recommend, like for 30 seconds, to do something just before entering into a very high pressure environment, or if the CEOs they enter into the board meeting or something, where your nervous system is going to go through some sort of resilience or some sort of anxiousness. So, is there any
Yeah.
hack we can do like for 30 seconds before we enter into that situation?
Yeah. So there's a lot, but the first thing that came to mind is we were talking about rhythm, right? See if you can notice the rhythm of the emotion that you're feeling, right? So it's going to be different for everybody, but if I'm going into a situation where I'm starting to feel anxiety, I tend to feel it in my chest, and it is like a fluttering, you know? So I will either find out where I notice it and start mirroring that, right? Doing it with it. A lot of times we think, oh, it's going to make it worse. It actually makes it better because we're tending to it, right? So I'm like, okay, okay, yeah, maybe there's some self-talk going on, right? And you can actually migrate it. You can let it like, okay, now I'm going to do it down my arm. I'm going to do it down the other arm, down my body. This looks like tapping for some people. It is, right? Some of us, it'll morph into a little bit of a circle, right? Or a brushing or a rubbing, right? The thought is, well, if I'm feeling it here, why would I want to migrate it everywhere in my body? Then my whole body's going to be shaking. We're diffusing it. We're diffusing the sensation. It is concentrated here, or if it's concentrated here or here, we want to move it through. We want to move it out, right? So maybe you're feeling it in your shoulders, right? And it's like a tightening, and you're like, ugh, tighten into it, tighten up, and then, oh, release. Tighten up, release. It only takes less than 30 seconds, right? The anxiety is still going to be there. It's not about eliminating it. It's about noticing it,
Yeah.
being present with it, doing something with it, right? And then after the event, the talk, whatever you're doing, just like we always see our animals doing this, our cats or dogs, give yourself a wiggle, shake it out, right? Allow whatever that excess energy is that built up because we were like, oh my God, this is so anxiety provoking. Shake it out, let it go, brush it off, and know that that's not it. It's going to stay there for a little while. Keep tending to it throughout the day. Rub, pat, caress, squeeze, shake it out, shake it out. Um,
I love
those
that.
are some easy, like tangible, like we're animals. So let's remember, like, treat ourselves as such, diffuse the tension, let the energy move through you. I find that super helpful. And then you're still working with what's there. So if I'm in freeze and I'm freezing, go with the freeze, thaw out your body. If you're shaking, go with the shake, smooth out your body. Start to change the rhythm and the intensity of what's showing up. You will feel an immediate difference.
100%, 100%. And I'm going to definitely start doing that for sure. But I will
Yeah.
pick up on the something which is on your background, which is also something which I caught my attention first time when I was trying to do the research on you, which is the best-selling book, Body Aware, which you wrote.
Uh-huh.
So I want to know that what inspired you, because there's so much literature in this area. So what really inspired you to write a book? And if you can give like one of the incidences, which you thought that, it's missing for people's
Uh-huh.
attention, and that's what you wanted to capture predominantly in the book.
Sure. Well, it really it started a couple ways. I had some people in my life that were like, "You should write a book. You should write a book." It's like, I'm not a writer. I don't know. That sounds cool, but me, I'm not really sure about that. So that voice kept coming up. I was like, "You should write a book. You should write a book." But
Yeah.
ultimately, what did it was the pandemic. Things kind of shut down, and I wasn't seeing my clients in person. And I thought to myself, well, what if I never see them in person?
Mm,
Yes, I can talk to them, but what are some ways that I can, show them or help them, support them in my absence? I created this workbook online, and that kind of became the bones for Body Aware. And
mm,
then through the pandemic, because I didn't have free time, so to speak, but I did have some time where I actually felt inspired to sit and start writing down my thoughts.
mm,
It morphed into Body Aware, and it became not just a resource for my clients, but I was like, huh, what if I could share what I do with other people who I'll never see, never meet, never talk to, are on the other side of the world? One, I want people to know about dance movement therapy. So I really wanted to see a mainstream book talk about dance therapy that you could pick up at your local bookstore or, at your local, whatever, Barnes and Noble.
Mm.
Uh, and I wanted to, again, I say start, but continue the conversation that the way you move impacts the way that you think. And that it does not start and end with thinking. It actually starts with sensing and feeling and changing the way you show up in your body to change the way you talk to yourself and the way that you think.
Mm.
So I'm really happy that those things happened. It's continuing the conversation. I thought that that was going to be like it, this will be this will be the culmination of what I do. And I'm realizing it's just the beginning, it's just the starting point. So sometimes I think about like what I would write now with what I know. It would look very different. This would just be one chapter.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I was about to say.
yeah, it's been lovely to see how it's impacted people. We've had wonderful conversations around it. So yeah, it's been the starting off point, and now it's actually inspiring me to write more, which has been great.
Which is amazing. And I want to also pick up on something which you do, which is the DMT's efficacy, right? So it's still not become the mainstream like other sort of services or other sort of treatments. So maybe because, people are not still recognizing the impact of it. So do you think that because I don't know if it's covered in insurance in the US, or does it get like a lot of funding, or maybe the mainstream doctors do not uh, get into the whole thing of, prescribing this sort of therapy? Do you think
Yeah.
that, what do you think, according to you, should be done to actually put this into the mainstream?
I think it takes things like this, opportunities to talk about it, opportunities to educate on it. I personally am able to use health insurance if my clients choose to, but it is not because I'm a dance therapist. It's because in my state, I'm a licensed counselor.
Mm.
So counseling is recognized as a, service for insurance. I would love for creative arts therapies to be deemed enough on their own. But again, because of like bureaucracy and the state specifically, like licenses need to be in place. That's kind of the ethical standard. We don't have a license as a dance therapist. We
Okay.
have board certification. It's different. It doesn't stand it stands alone as a practice, not necessarily for insurance purposes. So I think it just continues. We just need advocacy, so whether it's me or colleagues, a lot more people are putting themselves out there, like in a social media capacity, talking about what it looks like, writing about it, um, working with it, helping people understand that talking isn't everything. There are a lot of body-based methods out there. It's hard. I mean, the field as a field, an organized field in the US, it's been around since about the 1940s, but it's still so mysterious and unknown. So it you got to push the envelope a little bit. Not everybody always sees eye to eye with the way I talk about it, but it has really created more of a platform where people are talking about what is this dance movement therapy? How does dance help with healing? Bridging the gap where mental health or traditional mental health is kind of falling short. And ironically, now we're not because of me, but like we're seeing messaging everywhere. National Geographic, CBS Morning News, World News, like dance heals this, dance heals that, dance is better than antidepressants, dance is, and people are like, oh my God, I had no idea. You're like, it's the oldest form of healing. Did you really, like, what?
I
So I
know.
have to like reel in my cynic and just, be like,
Yeah.
yeah, let's have these conversations. Dance, creativity, arts, like this is where it's at. And slowly the medical field is starting to get on board and realize like sound is healing, music is healing. We can prescribe, yes, maybe my insurance isn't going to cover a dance class every week, but if my doctor says, here's a medication, also, I want to see you in dance class, a couple times a week,
Then they
what kind of world would we be in? Like
will.
I can't imagine. I've had a doctor say do some meditation, do some yoga. It's very rare that they say, try dancing.
Yeah, yeah,
I think if they did, doctors are prescribing nature. So come on, why not dance?
totally, totally. And I hope that with this, a lot of people would proactively do it, and maybe a lot of doctors will start prescribing this. So, no, so more
I hope
power to
so.
you for doing this. And before I end, I want to know about the world of AI we live in. And in this,
Okay.
when people's minds are like constantly busy with swiping and scrolling, and we're just too trapped with the whole AI and the phones, and everything is taking, all these digital tools actually are hovering around our mind's health. Do you think that this technology will be an amplifier for our stress, or do you think that it is the distraction from everything what we go through in terms of anxiety? Or so, what's your view on that?
I'm gonna say both. I think it has incredible power to help, to support. Uh, there are some really powerful ways that obviously technology and perhaps artificial intelligence can help. I'm always looking at like medical advances, there's probably ways I don't even know or understand in which technology, maybe even AI, is going to help advance the wellness of a society.
Hmm.
It has to be married with awareness. It has to be married with, I think, concern and strategy, right? That we just like these things are born and we're like, here, we're going to give it to the world without any implications. We don't have like general guidelines. Like we're seeing it in social media. We let everybody and anyone have social media, I don't know, 15, maybe 20 years ago now. And now we're seeing the implications for what it does to young minds, to everybody, but like especially young minds that
Oh,
should not be engaging with it, right? So my concern is we're going to, yeah, think less, override our feelings more. But if I can leave people with one message that's been consistent through our chat today, technology and AI change the way that we move. And when we change the way that we move, it will ultimately change the way that we think. And
hmm.
that's not always a good thing. So if your AI, your tech use is we're changing our evolution, which is actually we are like evolving past movement, which is a real problem. So if you're marrying it with all of your movement strategies already, and we're limiting the scroll, we're noticing how we feel when we're engaging in it. Great. Enjoy your social media, enjoy your AI, but it is ultimately changing the way that we move. And if you change the way you move too much, you're changing the way that you think and you're doing a huge disservice to your mental and emotional well-being.
Oh my God, love that. And on that note, before I let you go, Erica, I want to ask some rapid fire questions. Whatever comes to your mind, just bring it up. Okay, the first question is, what's the best piece of advice you ever received?
Be yourself. Like, don't worry about others. I'm still working on that, but like, just yeah, be true to who you are. Don't let other people talk you out of something that you know is right for you.
Amazing. What's your everyday self-care routine?
Dance every day. Like that's it. Dance.
If you could meet 16 years old Erica today, what is the one thing you would tell her?
Um, the words that came to my mind were keep going. Just keep going. Like whatever that means, whatever that looks like. Things are gonna get hard. You're not always gonna understand everything, but like just trust that, you're you're where you're supposed to be.
Hmm.
I have to remind myself that all the time, but I think as a 16-year-old, it would have been helpful to hear that too.
100%. What's your most favorite book apart from Body Aware, which you recommend everyone should read?
Bodyfulness. It's by Christine Caldwell, who she's also a dance movement therapist, but she's so much more than that. Somatic practitioner, educator, wellness, yeah, all of that stuff. She's an educator out in, I think she's in Colorado. But it's called bodyfulness. So not just mindfulness, bodyfulness.
Amazing. And what is the biggest misconception about dance movement therapy which you think people have?
Whoa. Can I say two? One, that you have to be a good dancer. Not true. Uh, Two, that it's fun because it's not always fun. It's enlightening. It's empowering. It's not always fun.
Hmm. And it is good to dance with group, or it is good to dance with your own self when no one is watching? Does it have a different impact into your mind and body?
Does have a different impact. Both are necessary. But if you are more of an introvert, you have social anxiety, a dance therapy group is not necessary to gain, all of the healing benefits. But there's so much research that shows that dancing or moving in community has so many healing benefits. But we don't want to, pressure ourselves or push ourselves into a group necessarily. The same thing can be said if you get to a place where you can go out in public and watch people dance. Can you, do you want to go to a club and dance? Maybe you just go to a performance. You're with other people, you're witnessing dance, which has many of the same benefits as actually participating in dance itself.
Love that. Erica, thank you so much on this
Thank you
note.
so much for having me.
It's been amazing, and thank you for being truly transformative and talking about the subject which is so close to your heart. But you've actually given us new vocabulary today to understand what our body is telling us and how do we heal without even overthinking or overdoing anything. And just by shifting the way we move, I mean, we can quite literally shift the way we live. So thank you for doing that. And to everyone listening, this isn't just the podcast. This is a global sisterhood. This is a group dance and it's a group hug that no matter what someone says, you can dance or you cannot dance. Just listen to your body, listen to your mind, because your body and mind are too intelligent, and shake it off all the negativity, what people tell you around, but just follow your heart, because ultimately that is going to impact your mind. So dance like your nervous system has paid a VIP ticket. So because we just don't live to survive, we live to enjoy and breathe. So until next time, stay amazing, stay powerful, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.
Welcome to the You Are a Force podcast channel, your go-to space for real stories, fearless dreams, and unstoppable women rewriting the rules. And the force behind this podcast. Here is your host, Binoli Botadara.